What's going on, Pack a Day members? Welcome into this members only Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, more importantly, for being members, and thank you for all the support. Many of you for well over a year now. I see all the time, like, most hated Minnesotans been a member for like 16, 18, 19 months, whatever it's been a crazy amount of time. So whether you've been here for a day or since we started memberships, thank you so much for all the support. I cannot thank you enough, and I appreciate you guys a ton. Let's get into your questions right away. I should have about an hour, maybe a little bit more to get through everything today. So yeah, we'll try to get to hopefully all of your questions, but if we get a little bit short on time towards the end and still have a lot of questions left, we might just go a little bit more lightning round towards the end, but try to get to as much as we possibly can. All right, Spider Monkeys, I saw this question ahead of time. I like it a lot. It's a really interesting question. Between these five, if they were all in the same year, how would you have ranked them coming out of the draft? Jenkins, Belton, Myers, Ryan, and Tom. The two of them are easy. Jenkins would be number one for me. I thought he was by far and away the best prospect coming out of the respective drafts of those five. And as much as I liked him coming out, there was still a reason that Zach Tom went later on day three. There was a lot to love about him. You could easily see why he should have gone earlier than what he did, but there was also a reason why he went later. That sort of type of player doesn't turn out a lot in the NFL. So you could understand why he went a little bit later. So as much as I liked him, I'd still probably put him at number 5. There's a reason the other ones were taken rounds 2 and 3. All right. So Belton, Myers, and Ryan. This is a really interesting conversation. So I would probably honestly lean towards Myers maybe being on the top of that list. Obviously it hasn't worked out that way, but the struggle with Myers is twofold. Number one, he's just not been good at football for the most part. That's aggressive, but he hasn't been second round worthy, right? In his time in Green Bay, and obviously he's now a New York Jet. And the other thing is, of course, the Creed Humphrey situation. There was zero world ever anywhere at any point in time that he should have gone ahead of Creed Humphrey. That is a patented absurdity. Everyone knew it at the time. We don't need to go over it anymore. But that was the crazy part. Other than that, had Creed Humphrey been well gone by that point, I don't think anyone would have had an issue with Myers going where he did to Green Bay. Like, he was a late second, early to mid third round pick at worst in that particular draft. And overall liked his tape in college. I don't think he tested because I think he had an injury right beforehand. Everyone bragged about his toughness, bragged about his, acumen as a actual center and stuff that he could do at the line. He had the great size, the great weight, like just everything that you were kind of looking for. So I didn't have any issue with that being the pick. It just didn't work out. I would probably go Myers, and then I think I would go Belton and then Sean Ryan, but that's probably the one that is the most unique because I could make an argument for either of them. I would have probably had both of them as right around the same, like early to mid third round grades. Again, I have no issue with Belton going late second, and I would have no issue, honestly, if Sean Ryan would have went late second in the draft that he went in. So I would say those are pretty darn equal. So I'll go Jenkins, and then I probably would go Myers, and again, which just ends up being wrong. But again, you evaluate the prospect on their own merits and the percentage of likelihood that they're going to succeed in the NFL. It just didn't work out for Myers. And then I probably would, again, have Belton and Ryan right in the middle, and then Zach Tom towards the end. Now, obviously, benefit of hindsight, you're probably going Tom 1. I mean, I think Tom 1, and then Jenkins 2. Right now, Sean Ryan 3, Josh Myers 4 with Belton TBD. But with not having the benefit of hindsight, it probably would have been that order. Happy hump day, everyone. John, thanks for being here. Packers were waiting for a team to miss out on cornerback in the draft to trade for Jair. Which team missed on a corner in the draft? The Packers. Goody calls Goody up, offers a 6. Now get Jair to restructure. Yeah, the whole Jair situation is obviously crazy. I will admit something. I do have a horse in this race now. My horse in this race is just to get this thing done. Whether he stays, goes, I've not really had a huge preference either way. Again, I think the 17.5 mil for the year of Jair is not something I would do, but if they can get a restructure done, great, awesome, love it. Let's just hope he plays enough. If they need to release him, all right, great, understood. You didn't want to pay him $17.5 million. I totally understand it. Let's just hope that he doesn't go to Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit, play like an all-pro, whatever the case may be. No matter what happens, I'm just going to be hoping and praying for the best. But my horse in the race is not Jair back in Green Bay or Jair released or cut. I know some people think I, want him cut because I said, he's not going to be back. No, I'm totally cool with him being back. And I think there's a lot of ways to make that work. But whatever happens, I want it to happen like now. Could it happen right now? That'd be great. I'm done with the entire conversation / topic. That's my horse in the race on this one. Since this draft was so deep at defensive line in prior years, would Sorrell, Oliver, or Brinson been second or third round picks, or would they go in the same spots? Oliver, I think, goes in the same spot just about every single time. It's just a unique piece that you got to figure out how to use. I've said Nate, what is it? Nick? I always get Nate and Nick Herbig mixed up. Nick Herbig is the edge rusher. Okay. So what did Nick Herbig go? I think he went fourth round pick 132. So Colin Oliver went pick 159. So again, maybe in a different draft, he goes a little bit higher. I think that's kind of the comp that I would look at here. Herbig 6'2", 240, Oliver 6'2", 240. To me, they're very, very alike each other. There's questions as to whether or not they were going to have to be off-ball linebackers or edge rushers. To me, that's the comp. And again, Herbig went what? So what was it? 132. So 27 picks ahead of where Oliver went. I think that would probably be about the scene for Oliver, but I think he pretty much goes the same. I think Brinson in a draft where there's not like 20 defensive tackles taken ahead of him, not second or third, but I think he could probably have found his way maybe in like the fourth round. I think that probably would have been his ceiling in kind of most drafts, but I think they got a little bit of a deal on him. And I think Sorrell in a draft where there's maybe not as many edge rushers, probably could have found himself in the third round. So in a different draft, I think Sorrell maybe goes third. In a different draft, I think maybe Brinson goes in like the fourth. And it just so happens, I think in most cases, Oliver probably goes right around where he went in this one. Compare Sorrell to Vonnie Holiday. I've seen some clips where he has that nonstop motor running from one end to the other to make a crazy play like Holiday would do. Holiday was best at that. Spider Monkeys, I have a pretty distinct memory of Vonnie Holiday. Vonnie Holiday stopped being a Green Bay Packer in 2002. I was, 18 years old? Yeah, so 18 years old at the time when he stopped becoming a Green Bay Packer. That's been a hot second since that's been the case. So I would love to be able to compare the two. I think there is maybe some carryover or just the strength that they both play with, but I think the big differentiator is Holiday could play defensive end or kick inside a defensive tackle. I think for right now, Sorrell probably just becomes that defensive end. Also, again, Holiday was a top prospect. He was a top 25 guy. I would say Holiday was a little bit more like, Derek Harmon, not totally in like the same body type or whatever. But if you want to kind of put them at defensive tackle, what was Holiday? He was like 288. So a little bit different, a little bit, thinner than what, Harmon was, but I think that sort of player on the interior as a pass rusher, I would kind of relate those two a little bit more, again, just based off of my memory, but I have not gone back to watch Vonnie Holiday tape in some time. So I'm going off of some thin memories of back in the day, but I think the difference is Holiday could kick inside a little bit easier than what Sorrell probably could. What do you think about discount A'Shawn Robinson comp for Brinson? Yeah, maybe. Isn't A'Shawn Robinson? Yeah, A'Shawn's 320. Okay, so 320, not terrible. 6'4". Okay, so I guess somewhat similar. Now I kind of want to see what that looks like from an RAS standpoint. I think, I want to see this. All right, Brinson. All right, we're going to pull him up. We are going to then compare him. And we're going to do, oh man, see if we can compare here. Let's see if this works. I don't know if A'Shawn Robinson had we did. Okay. So Brinson's 2 inches taller, 8 pounds heavier, had better bench press, a better 40-yard dash, almost identical 10-yard split, a way better vert, a way better broad jump, a way better short shuttle. And then Robinson did the 3-cone and Brinson did not. So Brinson's the by far and away better athlete of the two. Robinson a little bit bigger, an inch longer arms, similar sized hands. I think Robinson is a little bit more stout at the point of attack had the ability to anchor a little bit better than maybe what Brinson did. So I don't see them as being total complete like apples to apples comparisons, but I can understand it a little bit. But I think Brinson's a little bit more of his own unique dude than maybe what Robinson was. But certainly Brinson tested much better than Robinson did. If Brenton Cox beats out Enigbari, does Enigbari have any trade value? I think so. I don't think it's much, but I think you're probably looking at like 7th round or comp 7th round value. The only thing is the contract is if Green Bay's ready to cut him, is some team willing to give up a 7th round pick for that 1 year, $3.4 million deal ish, right in that range, 3.3 million, maybe. I think he does, but the contract is what, sort of complicates it a little bit. But I think they probably are able to get something done there and maybe get, again, if Cole Van Lannon and Kadar Hallman and those guys had trade value, I think Enigbari definitely would. But the contract, again, I don't know if some team's going to want to take on that $3.4 million contract if Green Bay's willing to cut him. And then, do you just try to claim him at that point or just wait till he hits free agency and then just try to sign him for a little bit less? That would be the complicating factor, but I think there's at least a chance that he could have some trade value. All right, Chicken. Seahawks signed Sam Darnold and drafted a raw, gifted, fast quarterback in the 3rd in Milroe. Remind you of 2012 when they signed a quarterback from the NFC North and drafted a quarterback with the same traits in the 3rd. Ish. I think the difference here is I think Darnold was much better coming off of that season than what Flynn was in the limited time that he got to play in Green Bay. That's no knock on Matt Flynn. Again, Matt Flynn was a late round draft pick that was never really expected to have much upside, that performed well enough to get himself in that conversation and kind of a best case scenario end of season run for Flynn, right? With Darnold, he had a legitimately good season after being a top 5 pick, top 3 pick, I think in his specific NFL draft. And then of course, kind of crapped the bed towards the end of the year for Minnesota this past year. But I think Darnold's a much better prospect and overall quarterback at each stage of their career than Flynn was. I would also say that you have 2 totally different scenarios with Russell Wilson and with, oh man, why can't I think of his name now? That's going to bother me. Jalen Milroe. Because I think Milroe's definitely more of a project. I think he's going to take a couple of years. I think Milroe's a much better athlete than what Wilson was, just being able to, or I guess just faster, maybe. I mean, Wilson was an unreal athlete, being able to play baseball, football, do all the dual threat stuff as well. But Milroe's just faster and a little bit freakier. But Wilson was much more accomplished at that stage and was ready to come in and compete right away. I'm not sure that's going to be the same with Milroe. I did have a very similar thought process on that, Chicken. So I definitely know where you're coming from, but I definitely think Darnold better than Flynn, and I don't think Milroe was as good as Wilson coming out. Not to say that Milroe can't be that eventually, but I think it'll take more time if he does eventually get to that level. Kevin, thanks for the kind words. Do you plan to open a temporary store to sell clothing with Pack-A-Day's logo? So I had a store open. I think it's still, if you go to packadaypodcast.com, you can still see a couple things that are up there. I had a whole store built. And then I don't know if it was Teespring. I think it was Teespring that I used. For some reason, they just nuked the store on accident. And I'm like, can you bring it back up? And they're like, no, we cannot do that. And I just have had no time to build it back up and do everything with it again. Nor do I really it wasn't anything that sold a bunch of stuff anyway. It was kind of more hassle than what it was probably worth. So at some point, I'll probably take the time to put it back together, put something back together and get it out there. But we had a whole store on packadaypodcast.com. And it, for whatever reason, and Teespring was just terrible to work with as well. It was not fun. But anyway, I digress. At some point, maybe I'll get something up there again. Is there a scenario where Dobbs returns and Watson is the one who doesn't? I will die banging the Dobbs drum. He's so good, in my opinion. I don't think so. I'd be pretty stunned. Yeah, again, crazier things have happened. I said for certain Aaron Jones was going to be back in 2024. Spoiler alert, he was not. I said I did not think Jair Alexander was going to be back this year. We'll see. I still think it's about 50-50 at this point, but he very well could be at this point. And I very much do not think Romeo Dobbs will be back next year. So in the string of year after year after year, maybe he's the one that I have wrong next year, and maybe Dobbs is back and Watson is not. I think the concussion issue, I think the 1-game suspension last year, there was apparently some real smoke and fire to the rumors that Green Bay was at least looking to potentially include him in the DK Metcalf trade if something were to happen. It feels like there's a little bit more, to that situation. And I don't, again, just from the pictures that people viewed, apparently Dobbs was not at the, OTAs make it, or at least there's a chance that he was not, at the voluntary workouts, I should say. So I don't know. We'll see. But and again, crazier things have definitely happened. But as of now, I would say I think it's a pretty big long shot that Dobbs is back next year. Do you think Green Bay not taking a quarterback in the draft could be a sign that they might pursue giving Malik a backup contract, or is that all but certain he tests free agency to be a starter? I'm sure Green Bay has plenty of interest in pursuing a backup contract for him. I would not be stunned if they have already had some conversations about that. If I were Green Bay, I'd be offering him, some sort of, 1-year extension where he gets a little bit of a bump in pay this year, to help him. And then he gets a little bit of guaranteed money, or like a guaranteed, like, I don't know, $6 million contract next year. For Willis, it probably is, it's a gamble, right? He's not given any certainty that he gets on the field this year in any regular season action. If he doesn't do that, it's going to be hard to prove himself and say, hey, make me a starting quarterback next year. And if he doesn't get that, he might be more prone to what he can get on the open market as a backup. Even if that's the case, I think he'd probably rather take a backup job somewhere else where he has a legitimate chance to become the starter, whether it's a team that might be looking for a transitional quarterback as they develop a rookie, or whether it's just a team with a crappy starter that he knows he might get a chance to play if things go poorly. If I were Malik Willis's agent, or if I were Malik Willis, I would say, thank you, but no thank you. We're going to test free agency next year because we want the opportunity to try to become a starting quarterback. If I were Green Bay, I would definitely be offering something right now, but I think it's a really thin line that they can probably get something done. But again, maybe not impossible. And if I were Goody and company, I would at least be trying to figure out something to, maybe extend him if there is that possibility out there. Also, am I the only person who thinks this cornerback room is fine with or without Jair? I know it's not win because of them level, but no one's is, honestly. I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that. I think there's some solid cornerback groups out there. I am higher on it, I think, than most. I do think that you run into issues against better passing offenses where they just maybe don't have the firepower in that corner room to stay in some of those situations with the Jeffersons and the Addisons and or the, AJ Brown with a, Devontae Smith. I think it gets a lot more complicated. I know they're going to play a ton of zone defense, so your true kind of man-to-man corners don't matter quite as much, and you can find guys that can be successful in zone. And quite frankly, I think Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine, especially Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon can be successful in that situation. I think Valentine needs to bulk up and tackle a little bit better, but I think they have guys that can do that. Now it's just going out and playing those big time opponents and trying to make sure that they can be successful against those big time passing offenses. I do think it's always nice to have more options. And I think the bigger thing for me isn't necessarily the top of the depth chart. It's what is, anything after Carrington Valentine. To me, you have Valentine, Nixon, and Hobbs as true corners, and then everything's a crapshoot after that if Jair is gone, and you don't really have any depth that you can count on. That, to me, is a little bit more concerning than even the top end of the depth chart. That's where I have more concern with it. It's all over in Dallas after week 1 when Lamb gets 2 more targets than Pickens. It'll be an interesting duo to keep an eye on in Dallas. But I think they can coexist, and Pickens has a lot to play for. They're not going to give him a contract extension. At least that's the report. So if he wants a big contract next year, he needs to go on and have his best year possible. And, just kind of keep everything clean. Let CD be the guy, and CD's going to get a lot of attention. That should open things up for Pickens. So, you can see a world in which it works, but it'll still be, kind of must watch TV to see how that works out. Is it concern that nose tackle overblown? Kenny had the worst year of his career and Slayton had 45 PFF grade. Yeah, we still have the 7th best run D in the league. I get it's not ideal if Clark goes down, but is it a disaster? I think it's a big deal personally. Yes. I know Kenny didn't have his best year. I know that TJ Slayton's grade is ridiculous, by the way. He was not that bad. He was a solid player last year for Green Bay. I do think it matters in the extent that you've got to have guys that can hold up at the point of attack, eat some blocks, and you don't want that run defense to take a step down. For the first time, they look like a legitimately good run defense last year. And I do think, despite not playing quite up to the level of play that you would have hoped, specifically Kenny Clark, I still think Clark and Slayton were definitely a piece of that. A lot of it was other stuff too. It was the linebackers being a little bit more aggressive, playing downhill. It was the safeties, I thought, playing really well, filling those gaps when need be. I thought the corners tackled better. And I think the big thing was I thought guys like LVN and Rashawn Gary took a huge step as edge defenders as well. That needs to continue. But specifically in some of those short yardage goal line situations, you definitely want to have that guy available. And I think there is real concern that if Kenny goes down, do you have that player? And we're just seeing like teams bulk up, right? We're seeing the run game become more in vogue. We're seeing teams draft running backs in the top 10 again. We're seeing big time offensive linemen, big physical offensive linemen have a big time priority in the draft. Like we're seeing the return to physical football. You better have some guys that can play on your side of the ball in that vein as well. And I think Clark can, certainly. And we'll see if Brinson and Stackhouse can, but I do think that it is still a very important position for Green Bay. I just don't want them to take a hit there and all of a sudden struggle in run defense when they have every right to still be a very good run defense this year. Same question again, but for cornerback depth, why are we acting like we're screwed if Jair doesn't come back when he wasn't there for most of last year and we've upgraded our cornerback too, and the defense was all right? Same thing kind of that we talked about earlier. I'm less concerned about the top end of it, although I do have some concerns in some of the bigger games against the Devontae Smiths, the AJ Browns, etc. Although Jair got completely cooked by AJ Brown in the first game last year. So that's at least worth noting. I still think that you can win with Nixon, Hobbs, Bullard and Valentine. It's more of just the depth behind it. And you might say, well, like Jair didn't play. That's true, but they got pretty lucky. Valentine, I think, was healthy the entire season last year. Bullard stayed relatively healthy. Obviously you had Stokes, I think, for the first time all last year. Obviously you have Hobbs now for him, but Hobbs has never stayed healthy in his career. Nixon's been somebody that's thankfully been able to stay healthy, but you're just putting a lot of pressure on, you can probably get by, as Justice and I have talked about, with one injury if Jair's gone. We're like, all right, if Nixon goes down, you can play Hobbs and Valentine on the outside with Bullard in the slot and still feel pretty good. All of a sudden another guy goes down and now you're in Micah Robinson, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon territory. And I'm not sure that's the territory that you want to live in when you're going against some of the better offenses in the league. So again, to me, it's not necessarily top end of the roster as it is a lot of the depth that is very important here. Not to be blunt, but following Chicken's comments, who's more dumb, Dallas or Pittsburgh? I would put in this situation that I think this is a better deal for Pittsburgh than it was for Dallas. I don't hate it for Dallas. I can understand the move. They needed another wide receiver on the outside. You've kind of got this bizarro window right now. Like you're paying Dak, you're paying ish Micah Parsons. You're paying CeeDee Lamb. Like you've got kind of this core of a team that is ready to compete right now, but you're not quite there and you need another offensive firepower. You're not going to get it at running back. They got a bizarro group of running backs. The offensive line should be really good. Dak should be good. CD should be good. And you just needed one more threat. I don't hate it for Dallas. I just don't love it. I think giving up a third was a little bit steep, but we're also talking about like, if they would have given up a fourth, I'd have been like, yeah, that sounds about right. I think that, or like if they gave up a third, but got a fifth in return, but I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. So it's not off by much. I think and they could easily give up a third, have Pickens play out the year and get a fourth round comp pick next year for Pickens, or like I guess the year after. Right. So that's within the realm of possibility as well, that they actually don't give up much in overall trade value through the entire course of this. And you get a good player for a year in the meantime, who is in a contract year and has everything to play for. For Pittsburgh, I just love getting the third round pick. The draft's in Pittsburgh next year. Not that plays a major factor, but you get an extra pick to play with. Also, they're probably going to be in a situation where they need to go quarterback hunting next year. And if that's the case, there could potentially be quite a few quarterbacks in the draft next year in the first round territory. They might need to move up and use some of those second and third round picks as ammunition to be able to go and get somebody. So that could be helpful to them next year as well. So I don't necessarily hate it for both or for either side, but I like it for Pittsburgh probably a little bit better than I like it for Dallas, but it's not far off. Do you see the Packers' continuity as being such an advantage for them in 2025? I've always heard continuity was important in the NFL, but it didn't seem to make a big difference last year. I think it helps. I think it can help. I think you also have to worry about, continuity is good, but you don't want to get stale either. And I don't think Green Bay did, to be clear. I think if you hit a point of continuity, but there's no turnover, there's no additions, there's no new thing that can help you, then that is, to me, where it gets a little bit more scary. For Green Bay, adding Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks and Matthew Golden and Anthony Belton and even guys like McCole Hardman potentially, or an Isaiah Simmons, I think you brought in enough, Savion Williams. I think you brought in enough new blood to this team to still kind of have that energy and enthusiasm and make improvements. But I do think that some of the continuity can definitely help. I think a lot of last year, and I talked about it, if you guys remember, I talked a ton about it going into the season. It was my biggest fear of the team, is when you have a young team that has success early, it is so easy to take your foot off the gas. Even just a smidge, and say, wow, like a lot of us were rookies or second year players. We came in, immediately made the playoffs, crushed Dallas in Dallas, and we're this close to beating San Francisco. Man, this thing's easy. It's not that hard to win in the NFL. We got this. And it's so easy. And if you just take your foot off the gas a tiniest bit, you kind of forget about all the time, effort, energy, and work that went into the success of the previous year. And what happens is everyone just plays that little bit worse. And I think we saw a lot of that last year. Instead of guys taking that step forward, we saw guys either plateau or just take that little step backwards. And in the scheme of it, there's not many people that you're like, oh my God, this guy sucks now. But everyone, almost to a T, just took a little bit of a step backwards. And when you have everyone take a little bit of a step backwards, the team as a whole takes a legitimate step backwards. And it wasn't massive. It wasn't like, oh my God, they went from, almost winning the division or divisional round game to, being 6-11. We didn't see that, but we saw a team that could not finish big games, that went to the playoffs for a second consecutive year, but got crushed in that opening round rather than not crushed, but you get my point, rather than them sort of doing the crushing to Dallas the year earlier. So I do think there's just a little bit of that. I do think the continuity can help this year. And the hope now this year is that they got humbled a little bit last year. Everyone recognizes that, okay, maybe it's not quite as easy. We have to work harder. And it's exactly what Brian Gutekunst stressed when he said urgency. It's time for everyone to get that urgency back. Hopefully, again, I'm not looking for necessarily everyone to go from good player to all pro, but if everyone now takes that small step forward that we were hoping we were going to see last year, you'll be stunned at how much it helps everyone else. Ryan Wood has the tweet post or pinned to his profile. And I'll just read it really quick because it's worth noting. And he did a great article on it. The Packers dropped 34 accurate throws from Jordan Love this past year. 34 accurate throws, not ones that were all over the place or sprayed or whatever. The Packers dropped 34 throws. If they caught half of those accurate throws, instead of Jordan Love's completion percentage being at 63.1%, which was tied with Will Levis for 28th, he goes up to 67%, right at basically Patrick Mahomes level. That's the difference. It's not all of a sudden, Jaden Reed needs to be a first team all-pro wide receiver. It's just catching the balls that you're supposed to catch. For Jordan, it's when you've got those layups down the field or even short intermediate, you're not sailing those either. You're hitting your receivers in stride. It's all the little things that kind of add up. So to me, I think there was maybe a little bit of a taking the foot off the gas, which is very common for a young team. They usually get humbled after having some success. Look at it in the NBA, look at it in football, it happens all over the place. So last year was a little bit of their humble pie. Now you hope they had the humble pie and now we're hungry for something better. And if that happens, now with the additions that you had, with some subtractions of guys like Eric Stokes and Josh Myers who have not been performing up to expectations, the hope is that everything comes together and makes it much more clear and much better in 2025. That's the hope, but we'll see if that actually comes to fruition or not. Did they actually sign El Gersma? I heard there was the report that they offered him a contract. I've not seen anything yet that they actually signed him. The report is that they offered him, but I have not seen that he's actually signed yet. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't think the continuity was the issue. Big Baby Blue. A couple of key injuries and inability to catch the ball, get into a rhythm for the most part caused issues. Certainly, Ben, we're on the same page. Just talked about those drops as well. Shout out to the guy who mentioned El Gersma in the Q&A like a month ago. Yeah, whoever that was like well ahead of the curve. Like that we talked about, and I tried to find film on him and I could not find film on him. That dude was like way ahead of the time. So shout out to that guy, is for sure correct. Way too early prediction. Williams is going to be our number 2 in yards behind Kraft. Savion Williams, number 2 in overall yardage. So Kraft is going to be 1 and Savion Williams is going to be number 2. Chris, that is a very hot prediction. We'll see if it comes to fruition. I'm going to bet against that of Kraft and Williams being number 1 and number 2 in yardage. But hey, if it happens that way and those two end up having great seasons, not going to be super upset with it. Which 22 draftees do you believe will get enough interest after this year to generate compensatory picks? All right, let me see here. Why is that not coming up? All right. So 2022. Quay Walker would definitely get a comp pick if he ended up signing elsewhere. Wyatt got the 5th-year option. Watson would generate, even if he gets like a 1-year deal for like 7-8 million somewhere, that's still a comp pick. Sean Ryan would absolutely get a comp pick, probably 5th round, maybe 4th round. Dobbs would definitely get a comp pick, probably 5th, 6th, 7th round, somewhere in that range. Zach Tom would get a 3rd round comp pick if he hit the open market. And Igbare probably gets a 6th roundish comp pick. Rasheed Walker probably gets a 4th round comp pick. So that'd be my guess. So Walker, Watson, Ryan, Dobbs, Tom, and Igbare, and Rasheed Walker, all 7 of them, if they hit free agency, would generate comp picks in some capacity. Now you can only get 4. You can only get 4 comp picks is the most that you can get. But you would theoretically, I think, generate 7 if all of them hit free agency. Not all of them will hit free agency, but if they did, you would generate 7 of them. Thanks for being here, Drew BDU. Do you think the Packers signed 87 to a 2 to 3 year deal? No, I do not. I do not think that he will be back after this year. I think there's even some chance that you could see a potential trade this offseason. I don't expect it, but I do think there is that possibility. But I do not think they signed him to an extension. No. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I've been wrong before on players returning or not returning. So if you're hoping for it, just hope that I say that he has a 0.01% chance of being back. And then there's a huge chance that he'll be back apparently. What are some realistic expectations for Lloyd this season? I think he's going to be a big time impact player this year. I don't think they wanted Jacobs to carry as much as he did in 24 initially. I agree with your second part wholeheartedly. I don't think they want Josh Jacobs to carry that heavy of a load. So I do think there's going to be, plans so that he doesn't have to carry the rock quite as much and they can kind of pace him a little bit more through the course of the season. I think the ideal scenario is that Marshawn Lloyd is going to be sort of your change of pace back, where you've got the physical Josh Jacobs, who can obviously make his own plays as well, but you've got a physical running back in Josh Jacobs. And now all of a sudden you've got more of a, speed/flashy back in Marshawn Lloyd that can bring a little bit more of a jump cut and a little bit more of a game breaking mentality to the game. And I think, I would pause as expectations slightly to say, he's going to be a big time impact player. I mean, to me, big time impact player would be like him being, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns or something like that. But I do think there's going to be legitimate packages with him in the offense. I think he's going to be that fun change of pace back. I think he's going to get some explosive plays. So I think there's going to be some really fun stuff that they're able to do with Marshawn Lloyd. I just think if anything, he's going to be limited by opportunity. And I think you're still going to get Chris Brooks on the field, assuming he makes it as kind of that third down back at times, and guy can pick up the blitz and be a blocker in the pony package. And then we'll see what happens with Emmanuel Wilson as well. But I do think there's going to be a legitimate package of plays there every single game for Marshawn Lloyd. And now it's just up to him. Can he make the most of it? Remember, he did have that fumble issue in college as well. He's got to make sure that he cleans that up, and he's going to have to get better at pass protection as well. Yes, they obviously had to change after the injury. Do you believe the Packers will give both Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker a second contract? I believe Tom will get it. I do not believe Walker will. I think there's some people that just believe that Walker's gone for sure. I don't think it's quite to that level. I think Walker could still earn himself a second contract in Green Bay. I think it's within the realm of possibility, but I don't want to do percentages anymore, but I would probably put it at more like 80% chance that he's probably not back next year. But I do think there is a possibility he still could be. But I think Tom back for sure. Rasheed probably not as likely, especially when you have guys like Morgan and Belton, both who could potentially fill in that spot. Thank you for the kind words, Ian. It is a labor of love. It is a ton of fun. There's nothing I'd rather be doing. Draft season is obviously a blast. Do you like Micah Robinson more than you did Kalen King coming out? What about their prospects for 2025? Yeah, I'd probably put Robinson a little bit higher than King just on the speed alone. I think some of King's limitations, for lack of a better term, do limit him from an upside standpoint as a player. I don't think either are players that I want to see on the field a ton, to be honest. I do have a sort of a project that I want to do coming up for an episode of just taking a much closer look at Kalen King and Kamal Hadden. I have the deep dive for Micah Robinson coming up. So that I've got done already. I've watched all the film. I've put all my notes together. In fact, I have the whole episode planned out. In fact, I don't know. That's going to be tomorrow's show. I'm going to record that tonight for tomorrow. So deep dive on Micah Robinson for tomorrow. And then coming up here, I do want to do a deeper dive on Kalen King and Kamal Hadden, especially Hadden, because I don't think any of his college stuff coming out. and then didn't get the chance to watch it, obviously, when he signed last year in Green Bay. So I want to go back and watch, because he got to Green Bay, played a little bit on, I think, teams last year. And then I want to go back and watch what he did in preseason last year, not with Green Bay, and then see some of his college tape as well. So I'd like to take a little bit of a stronger look at King and Haddon and what they could potentially bring to this team, because they could be in a situation where they're the number 4 and 5 corners on this team. Like that's not out of the realm of possibility, but I would say I like Robinson a little bit better than King. Yes, but it's not by a ton. And I don't know that I feel super comfortable with any of those guys being out there at this moment for a ton of snaps. I'd have a little bit of trepidation about that. I think Walker's less likely, with Tom being very likely. Ben, we're on the same page there. Who has a better career, LVN or Sorrell? That's a really fun question. Man, I'm going to say LVN, but I think it could be very close. And I think they could just have very similar careers where they're just really solid rotational edge defenders that neither ever becomes a big time starter, never ends up being a bust. Neither ends up being a bust, but they both just end up being, 20 to 25 snap per game, really sound edge players that can give you a little bit of pass rush, a little bit of run defense, but never really breaks out in a major way. Could LVN break out? Absolutely. Could Barron Sorrell break out? Absolutely. Both are within the realm of possibility, but I think if I were betting on each, I would both say they probably both end up being solid rotational edge defenders, and that's kind of it. But I'll say LVNs because I still think the upside's a little bit higher there. Why do Packers fans, in quotes, just want to give up seasons of Dobbs and Walker for nothing? Comp picks are probably better than what they will get in a trade. Well, I don't understand the Watson one, and certainly there's not going to be any trade value in Christian Watson right now because he's injured. He just have so much more value in Green Bay than he would anywhere else. Dobbs is the more interesting one. And I think this is much less to do, Mateus, with Romeo Dobbs, the player, and what he can do on the field. I think if Dobbs is just this consistent, player through basically what he's done on the field so far, and there were no other issues, I think you would probably say, yeah, you just keep him. I think the calculus changes for 3 different reasons. I think number one, the biggest being, I think it's aggressive to say he quit on the team last year, but he clearly was so unhappy with his role that it became such a big distraction that they had to suspend him for a game. That's clearly not ideal. And I guarantee you that rubbed a lot of people in the organization the wrong way. And to the point where I could see them being like, hey, if we can get something for this guy, we've got to consider it. That's number one calculus thing that's changed. Number 2, concussions. He's had multiple, what seemed like pretty serious concussions. And if you're concerned about that in the long term, maybe some other team is not as much, but if you have concern over that and you can get something in return before he has one more head injury and is maybe out for an extended period of time, maybe that's a consideration that you have to at least, for lack of a better term, consider as well, or, take under advisement. That's number 2. Number 3, actually, there's 4 of them. Number 3 is he got that performance increase from a contract standpoint where he's now making like $3.4 million this year instead of the, rookie, what would have been near basically like a rookie minimum or a 4th-year minimum for a rookie contract. That changes things as well, where now he's set to make a little bit more money than he was previously. The 4th thing is that I don't even know how many things I'm up to, is that Green Bay has not been shy drafting wide receivers since they brought Romeo Dobbs in. Dontavian Wicks has been drafted. Jaden Reed has been drafted. Now Savion Williams has been drafted. And of course, you've got Matthew Golden as well. Pretty premium selections, including a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder. Not to mention, you've got Christian Watson, who was drafted ahead of you in the same class. Not to mention, they went out and signed Mecole Hardman this year, and you still have guys that you like in Bo Melton and Malik Heath on the roster as well. And you can't keep all of them. Add on top of that of those guys, you probably don't get trade value for Hardman or Melton or Heath, but you probably do have trade value for Romeo Dobbs. Added on top of that is the idea that Romeo Dobbs is probably going to be the odd man out next year. You probably know that already. And you can get trade value for him now. And you can say, well, just get the comp pick. We just talked about there's probably going to be 6 or 7 guys potentially that could hit the free agent market that could get comp picks. You can't get comp picks for all of them. You're limited to 4. So that becomes a potential issue as well. And you never quite know what somebody's going to go for in free agency either. So if you can get that value now, also, if you get that trade now, you get that trade, that draft pick. Let's say you get a 5th rounder now for him, right? You get that 5th rounder for him in 2026. If that comp pick comes and it's a 5th rounder, you have to wait till 2027 for that. So there's so much more that goes into that. So it's not just like, hey, Romeo's been good, maybe you should keep him. Yeah, if it were that simple, it would be that simple. But the depth at wide receiver, his contract, the fact that you're probably not re-signing him next year, how the comp pick formula works, the concussions and the suspension, you've got multiple things that are going into why it could be something that Green Bay considers. Not saying they should or shouldn't, by the way. I think his connection with Jordan is at a higher level than most wide receivers on the team. I think Jordan really likes having him on the team, and I think that matters. By the way, I think he's going to be on the team this year, but I can understand why fans are definitely at least in the idea of like, hey, maybe this should be something we can discuss because there's reasons why it could make sense. So I don't have any issue or umbrage with people taking the logical approach of why some of those things could make sense. All right, the wide receivers don't step up this year. Do you think the wide receiver coach will be on the hot seat? I think we had the most drops last year. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one to kind of consider. I'm just hoping that that's not the case. But listen, anytime you put a bunch of resources into one position and they don't perform, yeah, you're on the hot seat. So if you get a year where guys like Dobbs and Wicks and Reed and Golden and Savion and those guys just do not perform the way that you would expect, then yes, I think there would be some conversation there because, you know, it's probably easier to replace a wide receiver coach than it is to say that the GM screwed all of the draft picks up, right? Let's just be real. So you replace the receiver coach, hope that you can make the necessary changes and get the most out of those guys because you probably don't want to admit necessarily failure on multiple draft picks over a 3-year period of time. All right, based on how the draft went, do you think the Packers might regret not re-signing Slayton? Seems it could have been a pretty modest contract and looks like we could certainly use the depth at nose tackle. I would have been for it. I think he got, at the time, what I thought was maybe a little bit more than what I thought he would. But I am curious now what that contract looks like. All right, so he got okay. I don't know. He got 2 years, 14, 7.05 mil per year. I would have probably let him walk for that. It also could be a 1 year, basically like $8 million deal this year. Yeah, I wouldn't have hated it if they brought him back, but I understand at that price, at 2 years, 14.1 mil, I probably would have let him go in the other direction. So hindsight, maybe I consider it a little bit more, or at least doing something a little bit more in free agency at that position. But at the time, and even now looking at it, 2 years, 14 for Slayton, I'm mostly good with letting him walk. Thank you, Fred. I got you. I got it eventually. How much impact do you think the knee injury had on Enigbari's offseason preparation last year? Do you believe he'll be better this year? I think it's a great thing to bring up, Donald, as we just don't know how much that was a influence or an impact on him, whether it's just from an offseason program standpoint or whether it affected him throughout the year. Hopefully he can be healthier this year. Hopefully he can be better this year. I really did think that there was a talented player there at one point. Just didn't think he had quite the season that anyone really hoped he would have a season ago. Hopefully he can bounce back. I think this is a big year for him. If nothing else, it's a contract year. Has the ability to go out and really make some money. So let's hope he goes out and does that because Green Bay could certainly use the upgraded pass rusher. And if that can come from Kingsley Enigbari, I am all for it. Is there an NFL reason why the Packers haven't gotten a game one home game since 2018? Assumed it would just be around 50-50 by chance. Hopefully this is our year. I got nothing for you, Killer Kenny. No idea why that's the case. Yeah, I wish I had an explanation. It seems very odd that that has not been the case. I know Green Bay has even asked for it. Like they've petitioned basically the NFL to have a week one home game, and it still hasn't worked out. So we'll see if the streak continues this year, but it would be nice to have a week one home game in Green Bay. I know it's rough for Matt and company, but honestly, I'm cool with opening on the road. I want as many home games later in the year as possible. Yeah, I guess from an overall standpoint, I don't really care what the order is as long as you don't have big road trips where you go like East Coast to West Coast, or certainly international travel plays a factor now. I more care about rest days than anything else than the order of home and road games. It's not like this team is exactly tore it up in December months as of, December, January. Under Matt, they've done a pretty good job, but Yeah, I'm cool with whatever, but I do think once in a while a opening, season home game would be nice. Again, I'm not saying it has to be every year, just like, hey, once every 3-4 years, throw them a home game week 1. I'd be cool with that. Love both, but I feel like Watson has more on the table than Rome does. Fair. Don't want this to happen, but what do you think Zach Tom's trade value is right now? It's certainly not going to happen, whether you want it to or not. It's a really difficult one because you have a cheap contract this year, but you're going to have to pay him probably, top right tackle money in football. I think most teams would want the opportunity to give him that contract, but you're now giving up a pick plus a big contract. What did Tunsil go for? 2025 third, a 2025 seventh, and a 2026 second, and a 2026 fourth, exchanged for Tunsil and a 2025 fourth. So basically, a second, a third, and a seventh is what Tunsil got. I think that's probably about right. I think that's probably about right for what Tom goes for as well. How old is Tunsil? Tunsil's 30. Tom is younger. Yeah, I'd say like a second, third, and fourth, second, third, and fifth, or maybe, yeah, I think something in that range is probably right for Tom. But it's a really, really interesting one. And again, it doesn't matter ultimately because Green Bay is never going to trade him. And I think Green Bay has more value on him than maybe any other team does. So it's going to be hard to kind of fill that gap. But yeah, thankfully, he's not going anywhere. Speaking of Willis, I saw that he and Micah Robinson are cousins. Interesting. I had not seen that. What's good, Andy? How would you handle a local media member making seemingly unsubstantiated claims about your favorite team's left guard center? Anything to worry about? I'm assuming this is the Jason Wilde, Elton Jenkins thing. I saw the clip. I don't have any context in it other than that. Other than to say that, like, usually Jason doesn't do anything without thinking it through and or maybe having some other information that maybe he's not leading on right now. I don't know for sure. I don't know the situation. I don't know that there's anything with Elton. I have certainly no sources on anything, so I can't speak to it one way or the other. Other than I would, for the most part, say that I don't think Jason goes around making unsubstantiated claims on things. Also, I think sometimes we take Packers conversation a bit too seriously. I think if Jason went on the air and said, hey, Elton Jenkins is really unhappy and this is something you need to worry about, then he better be able to back that up, right? Jason's having a Packers conversation with guys on the radio saying, hey, like this is kind of interesting, right? If we don't know if Elton was at, the organized team activities or not. If he wasn't, is there a world in which maybe he's there because he's upset with whether it be, being moved to center or that he wants a new contract or something like that? He's throwing out the topic for discussion. I think that immediately, and again, I haven't listened to the whole thing. I'm not trying to defend Jason or say he's right or wrong or anything in between. I'd have to listen to it again. But I think sometimes what's meant to just be like thought-provoking conversation then jumps into like, oh, did you hear what Wilde said? He said Elton Jenkins is unhappy, but he had nothing to substantiate it. I think he's just like trying to connect the dots of saying like, if he wasn't there, I wonder if there was something to it. What do you guys think about that? And then, the other guys would have the ability to say, yeah, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be anything there. I wouldn't make anything too much of it yet. And then Wilde could go, oh, okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next topic. So I think sometimes you forget that sometimes people are just having conversation about stuff and it doesn't have to be anything more than that. Again, not knowing the full, I'd have to go back and listen to it again. I don't remember it off the top of my head exactly what was said, but I don't know. I think for the most part, hopefully it's much ado about nothing and there is nothing there with Jenkins and there's, he'll be at camp and whatever. But we'll just kind of keep an eye on it. We'll see if maybe somebody else reports something down the road. But for now, I would personally just take it as like they were having a conversation as to could there be something off there. And if that's it, if that's all it was, I don't think there's much harm or foul there. Besides Josh Jacobs, do you feel comfortable? I feel great about the running back room. And now, if Jacobs is gone for like, an extended period of time or something, I think it changes the offense quite a bit. But I'm really excited with what Marshawn Lloyd, I think, can bring to this team. I still really like Emmanuel Wilson. I think Chris Brooks is that running back that every team wants to have that can do a little bit of everything. So now I love the running back room. You don't have the upside, I don't think, if Jacobs isn't out there, but I still love the overall talent and depth of that running back room. All right, we might need to get a little bit lightning round here. Green Bay is one of the best running back rooms in the league. If Lloyd is who I think he is, we'll see. We'll see. That's made much better if the interior of the offensive line is better than it's been, which I think it is. Also a good point. All right. Do you believe there's a scenario in which both Brinson and Stackhouse make the 53 as nose tackles? I wouldn't label Brinson as just a nose tackle, by the way. I think he can do a little bit of both. I think he's more of that run-stopping tackle, but can also play a little bit of 3 technique. But yes, in my 53 prediction, Donald, I did have both Stackhouse and Brinson making it, and then Wooden not making it. But I think they'll both be in the conversations for roster spots for sure. Stackhouse, anytime you're UDFA, your odds are against you, right? So let's, don't get super excited by it one way or the other. The more likelihood is that he's not on the roster, but I think he'll have the opportunity. I really do. Say the run D issue could be a big deal, but I think our 2 inside linebackers can get there in a hurry. For sure. But again, neither of them are ones that take on blocks very well. So you'd like some of your big guys to do some of the heavy lifting in that scenario. But yes, they're both very talented linebackers. The safeties have been better. The corners have been better. The edges have been better. Run defense is not just a nose tackle thing. It takes all 11. And I think the collective group next to those run stopping defensive tackles has been much, much better. But I still don't want there to be a weak point at that major position of sort of nose tackle, run stopping tackle, that becomes an issue in and of itself. They're going to run duo until it's stopped, and I'm here for it. Could be fun. Could be fun. Who do you think the training camp darling will be this year? You could see a lot of these rookies. Like you could see it being Colin Oliver because of the speed rush where it just takes, the team a while to get used to that. I could see him having a big preseason. I could see Javon Bullard having a really big breakout in training camp this year. Let's see who else. I think Jordan Morgan is set to have a really good camp. I really do. I think that could be one of them. I think Savion Williams could really impress. I think Matthew Golden could really impress. I think Marshawn Lloyd could really impress. I think there's a lot of guys that could fit that mantle, but Baron Sorrell is another one I think could start making a name for himself. But I'll say Javon Bullard goes out and has a really good camp this year. I'll go with that one. Full beard. So like the full thing, I've grown it pretty long before, probably definitely pre-video days. Maybe it was while I was doing the podcast, but probably pre-video days for sure. Man, when that thing, so 2 days ago, wherever it was right before I shaved it, I get to the point where I just can't stand the thing, or it needs to be gone. And you guys have seen the cycle. I basically shave it down to just a little bit of, kind of fuzz, and then just let it grow back out, trim the bottom a little bit, trim the, this area a little bit, and then just let that grow out up until literally the point where I can't stand it anymore, shave it all off and start the process all over again. So it's going to probably be that way for infinity. I actually hate, this is fine. Just a little bit of scuff, where it was yesterday. I can't stand how it just looks too clean. I literally hate it, but man, it is so much easier just to do that. And then to rather trim it exactly the way that I want and try to, it's a nightmare. So I can live with 1 day of me, 1 to 1.5 days, maybe 2 days of me not liking how it looks. And then as soon as it gets to this, and then beyond, I'm totally cool with it. I like how it looks, but no, probably never full beard because I get way too annoyed by it. Depends, Ben. Apparently Roman Wilson is somebody that they're expecting to break out in a pretty significant way this year. He was a second round pick? Was he not? Roman Wilson was maybe he was a third. Should have evened it out. He was a third round pick just a year ago. So they're expecting a breakout for him. If anyone knows breakouts at wide receiver, it's the Steelers. So they're trusting him. They got DK on one side. And then Kelvin Austin's been a really, I thought he took a pretty solid step last year as a slot wide receiver. So I have no concerns with Metcalf. I have no concerns with Kelvin Austin. I think it's that other one that you have a concern over, or like what he can be. But man, if they trust Roman Wilson and think he can be that guy, by all means, Pittsburgh probably knows. They know receivers pretty damn well. You mentioned Belton had poor outside hand placement. Is that influenced by him being bigger than anyone else, or would playing guard mitigate the issue? Hand placement has nothing to do with size and has nothing to do with guard or tackle. That is just making sure that you are playing with good technique, that your hand placement is good when you fire those hands, that you're getting it inside, and that you can manipulate them. And again, speed of it can be a little bit of it too, because you're kind of potentially having a battle for who gets their hands inside first. But to me, that has less to do with the size. It has less to do, I mean, that's where arm length can come in a little bit, but Belton doesn't have a lack of arm length. So to me, that is just technique and working it over and over and over until your placement is right and more consistent, and that you're getting those hands inside and control a little bit more, because basically you're basically given a free rein to hold when you get your hands inside. You get inside, you can hold inside. You can grab part of that jersey and you're in just command. You're in control. You have a blank check to basically do whatever you want once you get your hands inside. You get your hands outside and you start grabbing, it's an immediate holding penalty. So that it's just such a huge difference with where your hands are ended up, where your hands end up in any given one-on-one battle. So no, he just needs to do better from a technique standpoint to making sure his hands are firing inside where they need to be, and that he can manipulate the defender because he's getting those hands inside more consistently. So no, not really anything to me for size and or position in that scenario. Can Golden then be the spark to push every other wide receiver to take? Yeah, absolutely. Him and Williams both, and McCole Hardman, just everyone. Hey, wide receivers, they just brought in a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and a free agent that are pushing all your asses. You better be ready. Every single one of those guys better be ready. Because here's the thing. They might go in like week one. Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, those might be their top three week one. One of you guys is running the wrong routes. One of you guys is not blocking on the outside. One of you is dropping every other pass again. See you later. Matthew Golden time. Savion Williams time. They all three of those are probably going to start out being on the top of the depth chart right now. Williams and Golden and Hardman and Melton and Heath, those guys are still going to have to work their way up. But damn it, if there's not competition there, and if you screw up, again, whether it's route running, whether it's hands, whether it's, the precision on the route or blocking on the outside, whatever it is, you screw up, somebody's ready to take your place and take those snaps for you if you're not bringing your A game. So absolutely. Absolutely a catalyst, Ben. Do you get any information about which Packers improved the most during the offseason? There are several really young players who I felt needed to get stronger. I'd love to know whether it happened. I mean, you can see it a little bit in camp when players are starting to play better. You can definitely see maybe some size changes at some of those mini camps and OTAs. Like all of a sudden a player will be like bulked up out of their mind and you kind of notice it. I think Raven Green maybe had one of those one year where it was like all of a sudden he was like, holy crap, that dude spent some time in the weight room this offseason. But other than that, it's just kind of seeing it actually come to fruition on the field, whether that's in preseason or whether that's when the regular season actually hits. That's when everyone's in best shape of their life and is coming in with a new attitude, and everyone has some extent to that. Let's see which of them actually matters come Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, etc. when the regular season actually kicks off. Kay Muffins, thanks for being here. How do you see the starting O-line possibly shaking out? Is it time to see Jordan take the next step in his progression as a quarterback? And the second part, yes, I would love to see him take that next step. I think he will. I think we're going to be in for a really, really good Jordan season. Totally believe that. Offensive line, I think, is going to see Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan rotate at left tackle. I think they'll both get playing time. Aaron Banks at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center. I think you're going to see both Belton and Ryan at right guard. Maybe not right away, but I think eventually Belton's going to earn some snaps there as well and rotate in. And I think they're going to basically be preparing Morgan for left tackle in 2026 and Belton at right guard for 2026. I think that's what you're going to see, but I think you're going to see those two be rotated and then Zach Tom at right tackle. Will Carroll scouted El Gersma. All right. I think it was Will Carroll. I think you might be right. Not that Jacobs can't, but Lloyd as the lightning to Jacobs' thunder could be better than what we were wishing with Dylan Jones could have been. Yeah. I mean, Jacobs is way better than Dylan. Jones is way better than Lloyd, but I do think the collective could be better, mostly just because Dylan didn't work out to a large extent. He certainly had some solid seasons, but I think it could be in that vein. And I do think that there is the possibility that Lloyd could be a very, very fun player in this offense. Is having Wilson after Lloyd a little redundant? No, I don't think so. To me, Wilson is Jacobs' insurance, because if Jacobs goes down, you don't want Lloyd carrying the rock 18, 20 times. It's not what he's made for. You don't want Brooks being that guy. He's just not dynamic enough. But Wilson can tote the rock as much as you need him to. He's got that power. He's got that physicality. He's got a little bit of juice as well. So to me, Lloyd is the change of pace to Jacobs. Brooks is the do-it-all, pass pro. I can put you in any situation, catch the ball to the backfield guy. And Wilson is the true Jacobs insurance, where Jacobs is all of a sudden gone. Wilson might take over as kind of the quote-unquote kind of lead back, the guy that you give the ball to, maybe 12, 15 times per game and can carry that workload. And then you still kind of keep Lloyd and Brooks in those sort of roles that they were in, with probably giving Lloyd a little bit more run if that were to actually happen. I like both and want all 4 running backs in the 53. Me too. He is not officially retired yet, Frosty. Don't know. I would assume that happens some point in the near future, but he is not officially retired yet. At least not that I've seen, unless I'm misremembering something. Not that it would be the best 3 overall by any means, but would a healthy trio of Watson, Melton, and Golden be the fastest 11 personnel group in the league? It'd be in the conversation, I would think. Because what was each of those guys? I don't know that I want to look up all of these, but we know Golden was a 4.39. Christian Watson was a 4.36. And Bomel was a 4.34. So yeah, I think that there's probably a chance that is one of the fastest 3-man wide receiver groups that you could probably put together in just about the history of time. Yeah, I'd have to think about, obviously Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, maybe the Dolphins had a third one out there at some point that was in that conversation. What was Malik Washington? Washington was a 4.47, but with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that might even out a little bit. And wasn't Eskridge like a... Eskridge was a 4.39. So if we got a Tyreek Hill, Dwayne Eskridge, Jalen Waddle trio in Miami last year, that might be one that was faster. But outside of that, it's probably pretty locked down that 3 would at least be in the conversation. What kind of a deal do you think the Packers give Zach 3, 4, 5 years? I would expect a 4-year extension, making him. I think he'll be, when he signs it, the highest paid right tackle in the league. That'd be my guess. Yeah, the whole ACL thing was very interesting. It looked like he was going to be out for potentially a significant period of time, and then he just wasn't. It was a very, very weird thing. Yeah, the whole thing was very odd. Savion Williams, as a camp darling, yeah, definitely put him in that conversation as well. Assuming everyone is healthy, what game are you most excited to watch this upcoming year? For me, it's the Bengals. Let's see. We'll look at the opponents again. Home and away. I think there's a lot of low-key, really fun games on this schedule. I'll take Ravens. I think Packers Ravens is a very fun game, just to see how they handle Lamar Jackson, how they play against that team in Green Bay. You've got some big time games in Green Bay. Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Philly, Washington, Baltimore, Cincinnati. That is a massively tough home schedule. Holy crap. Those are some really good teams. Vikings, Lions, Eagles, Commanders, Ravens were all playoff teams last year. Were the Bengals? No. Okay. So, but the Bengals were 9-8 and had every right to make the playoffs. So it's just like the Panthers and then, the Bears, but I expect the Bears to be better. Bears beat Green Bay. We don't even talk about that game. It's a fake game. The away schedule, Dallas, Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh. We'll see what Pittsburgh is, but if that's an Aaron Rodgers game, that'll certainly be a big time viewed game. Broncos is not going to be easy on the road. Cardinals is not going to be easy on the road. So you've kind of like Giants on the road, Browns on the road, Panthers at home are kind of your only potential easy games. And yeah, it's for a third place schedule. It certainly doesn't feel like a third place schedule, NFL. I know it's all formulaic, but geez, it's a tough schedule. And did you think if the Packers had the magical benefit of foresight, they would still pick Marshawn knowing they'd lose the first year to injury? Probably not, especially with them knowing how talented maybe the running back draft was in 2025. But I mean, those things are such an impossible thing to ask, right? But if they knew he was going to be out the whole first year, I think probably they would have went in a different direction. Because I'm sure they had like 2 or 3 guys that were rated like the exact same, right? So if you were to know like, hey, of all 3 of these guys, you can have any of them, they're all rated the same, but this guy's going to be out the whole first year, you're probably just like, okay, we're going to move that guy to the side. We'll take one of these other guys. Interested as it's a similar situation to predicting risk reward with Jair and future injuries upside, and I loved your solution to that. Gotcha. That makes sense. Do you think our offensive line will be more suited toward moving people in the run game? If so, who would you start? Yes, I do. And there's a piece of me that would like to see what Belton and Banks would look like at guard with Jenkins at center. And then, I still think Rashid at left tackle and Tom at right tackle, but we'll see what it looks like. But I'm interested to see if Belton can get in that conversation. But Ryan can be a people mover as well. He's been a pretty good run blocker. So I'm just excited to see what that line looks like. And I think the interior, even if it's Banks, Jenkins, and Ryan, is still much improved with no Josh Myers there anymore. So very, very excited what that line could look like from a people moving standpoint. See, I don't think it's a cakewalk, Shane. Vikings on the road is going to be tough. Lions on the road is going to be tough. Bears on the road. It's the Bears. I get it, but it's still that they're going to want that game. Ben Johnson's going to want that game. Cowboys on the road is going to be tough. Broncos on the road is going to be, I think, a tougher opponent than maybe people realize, especially Mile High, all that sort of stuff that goes with it. Arizona and Heat could potentially be tough for Green Bay. Pittsburgh, if it is an Aaron Rodgers game, that'll be much hyped up. That's not going to be easy. And then I think Giants and Browns are kind of the only ones that you look at right now and say those are like easy games. That's well said, Ben. I'm also most excited for the next Green Bay game. Yes, I think the Bengals could be a very tough out as well. Would Golden be number 2 when the season starts? Yeah, I don't think that number's changing. I think he'll stay 22 now. Stackhouse shows anything at all this preseason. No way. Goots puts him on the wire. Brinson is too talented. Wooden may be at risk. I thought the same thing, Dan. If you were asking me to bet on it today, I still think he's gone. If you were to ask me legitimately of like what the percentage is, I think it's very 50-50 right now. I think it could honestly go either way. Just kind of still trying to read the tea leaves on everything. I'd probably put it at a true 50-50. I still think in their best case scenario, they would find a taker for him or figure out a way for him not to be on the team, but that hasn't happened. And therefore, I think they're willing to maybe figure out some sort of contract negotiation that works for both sides. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine, Landon. But I would probably put it very, very close to 50-50 at the moment. How'd you feel about the Packers signing Mercedes Lewis for one last dance? I think it would be great mentoring those young tight ends. I wouldn't hate it. I don't think he brings anything really to the table anymore. Honestly, I'd rather you just put probably like Belton or Jordan Morgan or whoever is your 6th offensive lineman in those situations if you want that sort of blocker at the position. But yeah, I mean, if you want to, there are things that I'd hate a lot more than that. I could understand it. I could live with it, but I don't think he brings too much to the table anymore, to be honest. They have not re-signed him yet. No. All right, friends. That's going to do it for me for now. Thank you so much for joining the chat today. And again, thank you so much for being members. If you're listening to this and you're not a member, it means that it's live after the fact for everyone. If you haven't signed up to be a member yet, make sure to check it out. Highly recommend it. You get these members Q&As live and can ask all the questions that you want every single week. Dan, really quick, how did the SC running back look? He had some interesting measurables and stats. That mini camp was not a real mini camp. So I'll have a better feel come training camp, OTAs, and preseason as to how maybe some of these UDFA guys look. And also I haven't had the chance to watch any film of the UDFA guys yet. So except Stackhouse, I watched a very small amount, but other than that, I haven't had a chance to watch yet. So should get the opportunity to in the next couple days here, because I'm hoping to do an episode on that this weekend. So should it get there, hopefully, but I'll keep you posted once I watch a little bit more. Appreciate you guys a ton. I'll see you all very soon. Happy hour on Friday, 3:00 p.m. I'll see you then. And of course, all the regular episodes coming out this week. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.